Welcome to the Stable Minded Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Griffin, and along with my co-host, Gabby Greco, we thank you for tuning in today. This podcast is brought to you in association with the Illinois American Saddlebred Pleasure Horse Association. ASHBA has always been more than just 3 horse shows a year. We are a community united by life-changing moments, lifelong friendships, and incredible horses that bring us together. What we enjoy today exists because past members believed in sharing this passion at every level, in every division, and we proudly continue that legacy. We like to say we do all of this for our members, but we can't do it without them. And that means we can't do it without you. Please take a minute today to become a member by going to iaspha.com. Together, we can continue celebrating these amazing horses today and ensure our future holds strong for tomorrow. This month, we sit down and talk to somebody who's been the president of not one, but 2 of our national associations. Someone who's won all 3 of the big stakes at Louisville and still found time to write a book. And now at the ripe old age of 50-something, he's decided to retire. Yep, we're talking to Smith Lilly about all of that, as well as clearing up some rumors and looking at what drives him to repeatedly step up and be of service to our horse industry. And now, here's Smith Lilly. If you could just talk to us about what your beginnings in the horse industry looked like.
Sure. Well, I guess my beginnings in the horse industry were probably different than most people's today because we had a true backyard barn, backyard family farm. It was my grandfather's farm, and he loved saddlebreds. He was a long way from a professional trainer, but he grew up in the day when people had horses as part of their daily lives. And so he was a very good horseman and a very intuitive horseman and knew a lot of things. And he always kept a nice show horse for himself, and he had horses for his daughters, which was my mother, Sandy, and my Aunt Claire. And they went to shows all over the Southeast, as far as you could go back in the day. It was like an 8-hour trip to Raleigh, North Carolina, but they'd make it once a year. It was an 8-hour trip to Lexington, Kentucky, but they'd make it once a year. And so they showed as a family growing up. And then, when my brother and I were little, we got ponies, and then we started showing horses. I was 7 when I started showing and got my first 5-gaited horse when I was 10, and I was terrible. Had a terrible year, but when I was 11, I finally won a blue ribbon with him, and we were just doing it all ourselves. And by the time I was 17, we went to Louisville when I was working at my second 5-gaited horse. I got her when I was 13 and showed her the rest of my junior exhibitor career. Showed at Louisville one time, and I was 7th place. So it certainly wasn't some distinguished junior exhibitor career that got me in the horse business, but I got to go to Louisville a few times and see great horses, and that's what got me excited about it.
Was that always something that you wanted to do, or was that just something that the family did and you kind of pulled in on going along with it, or was that always an interest that you had?
Well, from the time I was little, we had ponies, and it was just something. We did a lot of things. I played a lot of sports growing up. My dad was a sportsman he wasn't a rider, but he loved to play tennis. He loved to play golf. He was an avid skier. We had a ski resort, still have a ski resort. It's 20 minutes from our house. And so I grew up skiing and played football and basketball. And for our school sports teams, I played one season of baseball, and we never won a game, so I never played again. Played a season of soccer, So I did everything. But I loved the horses. And as the older I got, and the more I loved the horses, and then that was the most exciting thing for me. And that, and the fact that I wasn't a good enough, football player to get a college scholarship kind of clinched that deal. So the horses were really what I gravitated to. And I did go to school with an open mind. When I was 18, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was, very curious as to what I was going to do, but I wasn't settled on it. And by the time I was 21, that's when I really decided that this was going to be my career path. But it took a few years of college and, nothing else really grabbing my attention and getting me excited about what I might do. But I really got excited about what I might do, as a horse trainer. So that's where I ended up.
Interesting. Hey, when I listened to the podcast that you did with Tuffy, what was it, 7 years ago? I just listened to it last night. You had mentioned that you worked 2 young horses while you were in college, I think.
Yeah.
If that's correct, which
that's right.
Blows my mind, because when I was in college, I can't even imagine working young horses in college, but...
Well, I was working summer jobs at Leatherwood Farm for 3 summers, and then Leatherwood sent me a couple of colts to train. And it was a local boarding barn. It was a hunter jumper barn, but they had, it was a real small time barn, but they let me board my saddlebreds there. And it was, 5 minutes from campus. So I drive out there and work horses every day, but they took care of the feeding. So I didn't have to take care of all of the, every bit of it. Was in charge of their exercise, but I didn't have to do every last minute detail. But yeah. that was a good thing for me. I had, for really 3 different years, I had something. For the first year, it was just something of my own. And then the next 2 years, it was something for Leatherwood.
So then at what point did this turn from you thought you might want to do it, and then when you really decided you were going to do it, did you work as an assistant trainer right away?
Sort of. Again, that was kind of our job, was kind of exercise in summertime at Leatherwood. And then when at school, Larry Barbie was a trainer in North Carolina whose barn was a little over half an hour from campus, and a family friend, and known him a long time. And so I would go to Larry's once a week, and he'd put me on colts just all day long because he was glad to have somebody else ride those rough colts. And it was great for me to do it. So once a week riding down there, and then I had enough credits. I'd spent my last summer in school, I spent in England going to summer school. And so that gave me enough credits. I didn't have to go to school the fall semester. So I worked for Larry full time as an assistant trainer. And by then I had decided I was going to do it professionally. So I was really paying attention, really trying to learn, and then went back to school, finished up, and came home to work. My mother at the time, when I was 16, she started taking clients in our backyard barn. There, that year that I graduated college, she built our current training barn for herself. And so when I came home, worked for her that summer, and then went to work for Nelson Green in the fall I was a lot more grooming than there was assistant training going on when I worked for Nelson. I got to ride some, and I even occasionally would have something of my own that I was working with his supervision. But I was mostly taking care of horses and learning how to do that, at the highest level, which was, so important. And then after that, I spent 2 years with Nelson, and then went to work for Mitch Clark, and that was more of an assistant trainer job. I had my own string of horses and kind of managing the barn for him too when I was there with Mitch.
And where
in
was
California.
Mitch at that time?
He was in Rancho Santa Fe, California. He'd spent, I think Mitch was there, I don't know exactly how long, 8 years, maybe 10 years in California. And I was there the last year that he was in California. Yeah, we had M80 was a top harness horse. We had X's and O's, was a wonderful young walk trot horse who ended up going on and doing well. We won the amateur gated class at Louisville with Zeitgeist. We had Castle Bravo. I took care of Castle Bravo. He was still working as a gated horse at the time. Mitch trimmed him later, but I got to take care of him, and that was terrific.
Cool. So, you just worked for Nelson and Mitch as an assistant?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But I had 3 different managers at Leatherwood, plus Larry Barbie, plus Nelson and Mitch, plus my mother. So that's 7 professional horse trainers that I worked under before I was actually on my own. So I had a reasonably good education before I got started. And by then I was just 25. But I thought it was time to, get started.
Okay.
And how did that evolve after working for those people as your time as a head trainer at Mercer Springs? Like, how did you decide and come about that and make that decision?
Well, sure. I'd always intended to come back to Mercer Springs Farm. I love it here. I'm sitting in Mercer Springs Farm right now. Grew up here, love the area. I love Southern West Virginia, the people, the topography, the climate, all of it. And I always wanted to be here, and I really wanted to work with my mom. And so she had, as I said, built that barn in 92 and established a lesson program. And she had hired Alexandra, who is now my wife, but at the time I didn't even know her, to help her with the lesson program. And they had a lot going on. So I wasn't walking into an empty barn and trying to create something from scratch. I was walking into a big lesson program that had a few riders that owned their own horses, and not really a big time group of horses by any stretch, but some fun people. So when I got there, we were able to, send young horses in. Nelson helped me with that. He sent a family from Tennessee up, the Randy and Liz Thomas family, and he recommended me to them, and they sent me a couple of colts. And then we ended up, their trainer in Tennessee was actually Seal Wheeler. She was running that barn. And then when she and Kenny got married, she moved up to Virginia, and they had their horses with her. And then when Seal and Kenny moved to Arkansas, that family moved their junior exhibitor. They had 2 daughters, and the mother rode, and they moved their horses to me. So that's how long Seal and Kenny and I have been, doing things together. That would have been 96 or so.
It's a little bit of a sideways turn, but can you talk a little bit about working with your spouse? And, I think there's a lot of upside to it. And then some days it's probably not as up, but,
Yeah.
you guys have, I have not only successfully, looks like you've done it successfully from a relationship standpoint, but then really have done it well, as a horse barn.
Yeah, well, Bob, I just got to say, I just got lucky. That's really basically it. It's just blind freaking luck or God's hand pointing me in the right direction. I don't know, but fate, destiny, I believe in that stuff, and it really worked out for us. But I know you see it. Some spouses, they just wouldn't work together, don't want to work together. It wouldn't work out. And they have great marriages when one person's in the horse business and one person's doing other things, and it works well for them. For me, I was so driven, and I worked so much, really worked, fully invested in it, that there wouldn't have been time to do other things outside the horse business. So I don't think personally I would have done well married to someone out of the business that had a different career, because I think they would have been left out. But with Alexandra and I, we both were passionate about the same things, and fortunately our personalities work well. We understand each other, always did right from the get-go, and we very much shared responsibilities in an effective way at the barn. So there were certain things that I was responsible for, and that was just left to me, and certain things Alexandra was responsible for, and I would leave them to her. And then when we got home, anything Alexandra wanted, Alexandra got, because, I'm not going to be an idiot about that. So, that's her rules rules at home. But, at the barn, I actually had a say.
And then is there anything, I think everybody kind of knows kind of what Mercer Springs has become, but any secrets to the success, especially stepping into a business that sounds like it was pretty much like maybe young or amateur riders and coming out of a lesson program? Mercer Springs turned into something that was very different from that. And, it seems like you have a lot of young horses and some of these top amateur riders. Was that a conscious effort, or was it just something that evolved?
Well, a little bit of both. And certainly consciously, we wanted to be at the top of the sport. I will say Alexandra and I both, really like nice horses, wanted to be around the best. We're both driven to compete. I'm a competitor, and so is she, and we enjoy competition. And if you enjoy competition, you try to, improve. And so the fact that we kept improving throughout our career, I think is just by our nature, for one thing. As far as any particular plan, yeah, you just want to continue to upgrade, but you always want to upgrade. You want to learn to be better. I mean, that's one thing about horsemanship is that you can never know all of it. So you might as well keep trying to learn more all the time. There's always something new you can learn, and ways to get better. That is something that we was a foundational principle for us, was that we were going to keep getting better and finding new ways to do things. I mean, we didn't know, the apprentice program evolved over time. The relationship with clients we built over time. And it's the one thing that how do you achieve success? It's just one step at a time. You do a really good job with every horse you have in the barn, and hopefully it'll pay off. And then the next year, maybe you can have another horse or two that are a little better than the ones you had the year before. And it was not overnight. It was not a miracle. We didn't have a wand. We just tried to do a really good job with every horse we had. And, occasionally try to be smart about buying a better one for some people or for ourselves, and just climb the ladder. But it's one step at a time. It wasn't 3 steps at a time. We went to Louisville the first time. Was my first year home. Was the first year Mercer Springs went to Louisville. That would have been 96, and we took 5 horses, and 3 of them got a ribbon, and the best one was third, and that was pretty darn good.
And before we go on, can you talk a little bit about, you've had some clients that have been with you for a long time?
Sure. Well, they're great people, for one thing. So we've been privileged for that, to work for some wonderful people all throughout our careers, really. But I guess the secret to a lasting relationship in any sort of business, I think, is A, meet or exceed expectations of the client. So if the client buys a horse and spends a pile of money, with the goal being win at Louisville, the thing you better compete anyway. You better be close. I mean, you better hit the mark with the horses. So being able to hit the mark with the horses, I think, is critical to a long-term relationship. And that was always important to us. But also there's the communication of it, because anytime you're dealing with animals, you're going to have disappointments. Horses get sick, horses get hurt, people make mistakes, and being open in the communication of that, being able to deliver, bad news in a way that is clear, and taking responsibility when you need to, when you make a mistake, that sort of thing. I think being a good communicator with clients, and especially when the news is bad, because, anybody can pass along good news, but it's not always going to be good news. And how do you do that in a way that, they can at least feel like you care. That's the main thing. I think if you feel like you care and you gave a good effort, people will forgive you for a mistake. And certainly I've made plenty, but I've always tried to at least let them know that, hey, I accept the responsibility when I've made a mistake, and I care, and it bothers me as much as it bothers you, I promise. And so those sort of things, I think, go a long way towards building trust. And then you get a reservoir of trust built up with someone, and then you can withstand a mistake.
This episode is brought to you in part to the generous support of the Monarch Show Series National Championship. It's their efforts to build a better, stronger, and more inclusive horse industry that makes projects like this podcast possible. Make sure to join us this year in September at the historic Illinois State Fairgrounds in Springfield, Illinois. For more information, go to monarchshowseries.com. Monarch. There's a place for everyone in the kingdom.
Just kind of moving into your time as president at UPHA, I'm a young professional member. I think I just became a member a few years ago. So kind of your history through UPHA, and why did you want to become president of UPHA? Because I feel like it's a big undertaking and a lot of stuff going on. So why did you want to become president, and what do you see the value in being president of UPHA?
That's good. That gives me a chance to talk about my dad, because I really, I've worked on various boards and committees and that sort of thing right from the start. And that was because my dad told me a long time ago. He's a lawyer, and he took on this undertaking. He was chairman of our local hospital. We have a community hospital, and there's a board of directors that oversees it. And it's really a great asset for our community here. And he was the president of the board for a time when I was a teenager. And he would read every night and pore over things, learning about the business of hospitals, so that our community could still have a good hospital. And I said, why are you spending all this time on that? You get paid? He said, no, I don't get paid anything. I said, why are you doing it? He said, well, it gives me a lot of satisfaction. And if you don't give back to the community dies. Well, that made a lot of sense to me, and it really stuck with me. So my community has always been the horse business. So I know if you don't give back to the community dies. So I've endeavored to give back and participate on whatever level. And I started, like you, Gabby, as a young trainer, and I was on the young professionals group. But that group didn't get started till I think I was 33 or 34 was the first year they even had it. But I was right there at the first meeting, and always try to participate. And before that, I'd always go to our chapter meetings. Danny Troutman was a trainer in Virginia, and he basically said, son, you're joining UPHA. I said, okay, Danny, I'll do it. And that was one of the first horse shows I went to. So then I always tried to go to the meetings and, volunteer to help out. And eventually I became chapter chair, and that puts you in the board meetings. And then from there, the group at the top at UPHA thought maybe I had some potential, and they asked me to come on as second vice president. And then, that's set up that you spend your time as second vice president, then first vice president. And by then you've kind of figured out how things operate. Then you move up to president if you haven't screwed anything up too badly.
It's awesome. How do you, as a young professional myself, and I try to be as active as I can with our boards and committees around at the Midwest area, what's some kind of advice you might say to young professionals who are like, I don't know, I don't think I can make a difference, or I don't think my opinions matter? What could you say to them to be like, no, you need to do this, or not need to do it, but to help out?
Yeah, I think, well, just that. If people don't help and do the work, you don't have the shows, and you don't have the support system. And if you don't have, good shows, and that's what UPHA is all about, frankly, is making sure the shows are good and people see it as a fair and level playing field, and they have, good accommodations for the horses, and the facilities are good for the people. And that's really what UPHA does, is advocate to make horse shows better. I mean, there's some other things we've done too, in the area of, dealing with USEF or dealing with the federal government on some things. But that was the reason UPHA was founded, was to make horse shows better, because better horse shows make for, a better experience for the professional and the owners alike. And if the owners are having more fun, we'll have more owners, and then everybody will have better businesses. So that's what it's really all about. And I think that no job is too small. And when you start out as a young professional, be willing to do the small things. Be willing to show up and, help set up for an event, or just, I don't know, it just depends on what's going on in your area. But I think if you volunteer and volunteer your time to man the phones or help at a show, whatever it may be, then you'll get more than that benefit back to you. I know that's certainly been my case. Whatever hours I've spent volunteering, I think they've been, I've been well rewarded for it, just in other ways.
totally forgot that you were part of that group that went to DC, and that was during your time at UPHA, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I was first vice president. Then Tammy Knatzer was president, and then that's when the USDA was changing the rules for the walking horses, and there was the way it was worded. It was very much in danger of including us saddlebreds in the rule, or at least potentially doing so. And so we wanted to make it we wanted to change the language in their what they called it a rule. It's not a law, but when the federal agency passes a change, it's a federal rule. And so we wanted to change the rule as it was originally written. It was, I'm trying to remember how it was, breeds that with exaggerated motion or something like that. That's not exactly what it said, but it was about the way a horse went. And I think exaggerated motion is not right, but that's about what it said. And you could argue that a saddlebred has exaggerated motion, especially when you compare it to a Western pleasure horse or a hunter or any darn thing else. And the Hackney pony likewise. So we wanted to take that language out and make it, because our horses trot. And the horses that are sored do not trot in competition. And so we wanted to exclude the trotting breeds and make the rule specific to walking horses, racking horses, and spotted saddle horses is what it ended up being. And we were successful in that. We did a lot of work behind the scenes. I mean, all of us did. Tammy did. I did. We had a group chat with 10 or 12 people on it. Donna Smith was involved. Bob Funkhauser was the president of the Saddlebred Association, and they were involved too. Just a lot of people were part of that group, part of that effort, and we were successful. And then they ended up not publishing the rule that rule got pulled, and it never affected the walking horses either, but it was nip and tuck there. So it was that close to maybe us not being able to put pads on horses and compete with them.
And can you talk a little bit, just give us a feel for, like you were speaking before Congress, weren't you?
That wasn't Congress. We were speaking before the Department of Agriculture. So that's where we went, was to USDA. They had an office in Maryland, and they had a hearing, and we spoke at that. But then I think we did have a number of Congress people that we lobbied and got to write letters on our behalf. And that was a campaign that anybody who knew their congressperson could get that done. And I didn't know my congressman, so I couldn't get him to write a letter, but other people did and got that done. So we did have some congressional involvement, but it was not before Congress.
So after your time at UPHA, and you end up, beginning of this year, become president of ASHBA. And as I'm watching that happen, I'm like, who in their right mind would step in to this hornet's nest?
Right, Bob. No one in their right mind. It took me to do it, because there's no one in their right mind that wanted that job. I took and when I finished at UPHA, because everything has a term, and so I finished my board service at UPHA, and I was off of everything for almost a whole year, and then I was asked to join the ASHBA board, and Joe O'Brien asked me to do it. I was like, well, okay, because my mom was on the ASHBA board. Back then it was ASHA, and years back, and she was a secretary, and I'm passionate about the American saddlebred. And sure, if you're asked to serve, I feel like I should do that. And I didn't have anything else particular on my volunteer plate at the time, and I thought, well, yeah, sure. And so I came on. I guess that was 3 years ago, and I came on as just a regular board member, and then the hornet's nest got stirred up, as you say, and the rest of the board felt like that this is, after I'd been on the board at two years at that point, and the rest of the board felt like they really thought I should be president for a year. And so I said, yeah, I'll do it. I never set out, when you take the job at UPHA as second vice president, you're on track to be president. So that's the course of action. When I accepted the board position at ASHBA, I had no desire and no plan at all to be president. I didn't think I would. It never was my goal to do that, but it turned out that was what I was asked to do, so I did it. And I think we've had a good year. I think we've had a really good year. I'm proud of a lot that we've gotten done this year. Momentum's terrific. Sarah Mayer, our new executive director, is absolutely a game changer, I think, not only for ASHBA, but for the entire breed. If you all don't know Sarah, you should get to know her. Her energy level is off the charts. Her ideas are great. She's been an executive director for 5 or 6 other organizations through her professional career. And before that, she was a William Woods graduate and was assistant trainer under Kim Crumpler and won a class at Louisville as a young professional. So she's seen all aspects of the horse business and probably more importantly for the saddlebred world, all aspects of the volunteer, not-for-profit world. And she brings a ton of great ideas. and the energy to get them done.
This business is full of rumors. And one of them that I heard is that before you took the job as president at ASHBA, that you consulted your staff and actually talked to them about what it would look like that if you were going to have to spend more time there. Is that true? And if it is, can you talk a little bit about like what that looked like, knowing that you had that kind of time commitment on your plate at
Yeah, well,
ASHBA?
sure. I got to, that, like most rumors, it's partly true. There's some truth to that. We did sit down and talk with the staff. First of all, I talked to Alexandra. That was and she was like, yeah, if you're stupid enough to do it, go ahead, knock yourself out. but then I did talk to the staff and say, and we have had, a lot of really good people working on our crew over the years. This year's staff, top to bottom, the best we've ever had. They were absolutely phenomenal. All of them had been on board for over a year at that point, most of them 2 or 3 years and some longer than that. So I think there was only one that had only been there a year, and the rest had been at least 2 years. So they knew what they were doing, and they're very talented and skilled. And so I knew they could pull it off. So I didn't ask them if they thought it'd be okay. I told them that I was going to do it and that they were going to have to take up some slack, and they were all good with that. So, because especially at first, there were a lot of things that needed reorganization. If you recall, we hadn't had an executive director for some number of months before that. So there were a lot of details that needed tending to. And Sarah started the same time I did. I mean, she was hired as executive director the same day I became, or shortly, I guess maybe a couple of days before I became president. So there was this learning curve. We had to learn to work together, and there are a lot of details that had to happen. So there were several days there. I thought I'd take Monday off. Monday was ASHBA day for a couple of months anyway, and it was in February. So, it's not like we had a horse show coming right up, but we worked 6 days a week. And so I was working Sunday and Monday were my ASHBA days, and then 5 days as being Mercer Springs Farm trainer. And that worked out. And another question you had given me on the list was about my book. And that's really how I wrote the book is I would take Mondays. And so I'd work Sunday, Monday on when I wrote my book. And Monday is Tuesday, an exercise day for the horses more than a training day. We get out, everything gets out and works, but we're just getting the kinks out and trying to start the week off right without any, no disasters and no bad days, and just let the horses loosen up and get ready for the work week. And then the serious training really happens Tuesday through Saturday in our barn. So missing Mondays isn't the end of the world. And so that's what I did.
This stable-minded episode is brought to you in part through the support of Sold by Sunday. Are you looking to buy, sell, or promote in the show horse world? Sold by Sunday is your one-stop digital destination for weekly online auctions featuring show horses, equine embryos, stud services, tack, buggies, trailers, and even equine art and collectibles. Or use Show Horse Blast to promote your horse's achievements through their powerful email and social media exposure. Whether you're selling, shopping, or celebrating, Sold by Sunday's got you covered. Go to www.showhorsesales.biz or search Sold by Sunday to get started today.
I feel like kind of a bad host because, to be honest, I have not read your book. But I'll try to. I think Sarah has a copy somewhere. I will.
Well, Gabby,
try
you need to buy your own.
I
You
know.
absolutely need to buy your own things.
That's awesome. But I mean, I'm really interested in this side of. I graduated with an English literature degree, so I mean, writing a book, getting it published, going to publishers. I mean, that's a huge undertaking. So you said you took Sunday, Monday, but writing a book. How did you even? First of all, why? Because I feel like there's a lot of people that have this knowledge, but they're like, I'm not going to write a book. That's crazy. But I mean, you took that and you said, no, I need to put this in writing for people to read.
Well, I did it for a few reasons. When I told you I was 21, I decided I was going to be a professional trainer. And if you're going to do it, you might as well be good at it. So I wanted to be as good as I could. And so I read a lot of material. That was kind of my, you work during the day, but you've got evenings off when you're an assistant trainer. You don't have to deal with anything else. Or a groom, which I was, again, more of a groom than an assistant trainer. But I did a lot of reading, but it was hard to find anything to read about how to train a saddlebred. There's Helen Crabtree's book was out, and it's an excellent book about equitation. But there's very little training information in it, a little bit, but very little. There's some older books from the 30s and 40s. There's 4 or 5 of those, but they're from the 30s and 40s, and the detail was sparse and really not all that helpful. I was disappointed. So you can't find a book about how to train a saddlebred or a show horse. Lots of books on dressage you could read for a year and not cover everything that's out there about dressage or hunter jumpers. And I read a bunch of those, and I think it was very helpful, just general horsemanship theory and that sort of thing. And it helped me a lot, but there should have been a saddlebred book. So that was always my goal from the time I couldn't find a good one, was to eventually write a good one, because I thought it would be good for the industry. And I thought, anytime you can fill a need that's out there, you can probably make a little money on it. So I thought that it would also be profitable to write a book. So, but I got to be, after I'd won the gaited stake, then I had enough name recognition. And I also, by the time I was published when I was 42, so I had, spent enough time refining how I thought about things. And again, I didn't just decide to write it and sit down and write it in 3 months. I'd been thinking about it for years, and then, how to set it up, what to do. It had been a plan, and then decided to execute it. And it took about 2 years from the time I first started writing to the time it was published and available on the market.
Did you have a background in school in writing, or where do you even figure out where to start on something like that? It's one thing to write it too, but then there's a whole nother piece about, there are a lot of books sitting in drawers that somebody wrote but have never seen publishing. How did you work your way through that?
I took some English classes in college, and I was an economics major. But I enjoyed history classes, which you have to write essays for your work on history classes. I enjoyed English classes, and I was not a bad writer when I was in school. I did pretty well at that. And that was, I guess, one of my strong suits as a student. So I figured I could do it. I never wrote anything more than about 10 pages before. So a 10-page book's not going to get you too far. But I had an idea of how to set it up. And of course, it evolved as I was writing it. But then to get it published was a whole different deal. And had a lot of good help. I asked a lot of people. I asked Alan Bosworth, and he hooked me up with a man named Chuck Jones, who formatted the book for me. I knew Jim Walls was a great illustrator, and he could really draw some things that made the points. So Jim Walls did the illustrations. Doug Shiflett took some pictures for me and got those in it. And Chuck Jones gave me hooked me up with a woman that could publish it for me. So it's a self-published book. I did not go through a publishing house, because I knew that the market was limited. It's not like it's going to be in, Books A Million and sell a bunch of copies to the general public. It's a specific audience. But at the same time, a self-published book for a very specific niche market, I think can do okay. It's not like I wrote a novel hoping somebody would buy it and buy my story. I wrote a book on something I knew about, and I thought there would be enough interest in that it would sell. And it did really well. We sold, I don't know, about 5,000 copies of it.
Wow.
I'd like to see about 5,000 more sell, but it's been a good run.
So at what point did the idea for the videos come out? Was that always part of the plan, or did you add that after you wrote the book?
I added that after. I mean, I'd thought about it before, because there's, back at that time, DVDs were still a big thing. And I thought, well, these would sell. And so that kind of came along as I was writing the book. I said, I should offer DVDs, and that would work out. So we did. And I'm fortunate to have Lauren Ash, who had a videography, I think she still does, called Exposure, a videography company, and she had a horse in the barn at the time. So she was coming to ride her horse regularly. And so she would also, when she came to ride her horse, we would shoot a segment of something. We ended up with 4 that we finished, and a few others that we got started on and didn't finish. But those 4, we sold a lot of those. I probably sold more videos than books over time. And then, as the digital age evolved and people quit watching videos as much, and everything was online, and I just didn't keep up with that, because by then, I think it had pretty much run its course anyway. And I just haven't gotten to that as far as, hey, what could I really do here to have a streaming platform? And you think about it, maybe I could do a clinic and stream it, and then do the next clinic and stream it, and people could subscribe. But then how do I go about getting the camera and all that stuff? So it hasn't happened.
So we've all kind of heard about your apprenticeship program. There's a few people that I know that I'm friends with that have come out of your apprentice program. And I just want to hear you talk about how you evolve your apprentices, not only as just the horse trainers, young professionals, horse trainers, but also not just working with horses, because working with horses is a small part of owning a horse business. So how do you do not just the training aspect of it, but everything that involves owning a horse business.
Sure. And honestly, we don't get into the business end of it probably as much as we should. It's more in the barn end. And we would have weekly meetings, team meetings, we'd call them, and we talk about various topics. And I've got what we call the apprentice program manual, and it's everything you need to know to be a horse trainer, in my opinion. And there's sections on it in client relations and running a business. But frankly, the running the business part of it is probably the least that I've covered that less than everything else. Like how to set up at a horse show, how to make sure your horses get to the ring healthy and happy and eager and all those sort of things. How to start a colt, how to train a rider, how to coach a rider on the rail. We go over all that stuff. But then when it gets to how do you deal with the bank? Well, that's not my expertise. I just don't do it. So that I have not gone too far down that road with the apprentices. So that's one, I guess you'd call that a hole in our program.
I mean, you could also talk about how, like an apprentice, I've only worked for Sarah, so I don't know. I know how her program works, but if someone, let's just say someone was coming in and they're a new apprentice, what are their duties? Like, what do you sit down with them and you're like, okay, this is what you have to do. What does that look like as a new apprentice starting under your guidance?
Sure. Well, I modeled it after my experiences working for Nelson Green and Mitch Clark, particularly in that I thought that they were both all of the people I work for were very generous in their sharing their knowledge and helping me, learn how to be a horse trainer. And I wanted to pass that along. And so, when they come in, everybody starts with a string of horses to take care of first. That's, and nobody leaves here nobody ever graduates to the point they're not taking care of horses. So, you're going to do that. And by taking care of horses, you're doing everything with them. We all meet at the barn in the morning, and we're all cleaning stalls together. Nobody's above cleaning a stall, including me. And then when we get those morning chores done, then we'll go to, the training program starts, and everybody on the crew goes and gets their first horse ready, except me, because I don't get horses ready anymore. But usually one of the crew knocks off stalls a little bit early, and then gets a horse ready for me while the rest of them are finishing up, and so I can get started training, and just go through the day like that. And everybody had 5 to take care of. And according to your ability, you may be training one or more of those with guidance. And the better people get, the less guidance I'll provide. And then I'm just more like the guardrails. It may start out as I'll tell them exactly what to do. It may start out that I'll be lining and driving the horse and they'll ride it. Or maybe if they're not that good at riding at first, I'll let them jog the horse when I ride it. It kind of depends. And then the better they get, they'll get a horse to work. And then they may get 2 or 3 horses to work. Then, may end up as I've had people working as many as 4. And then at certain points, I've had people that work more than that had been there a long time, were really experienced. But that's somebody that's been there, say, 5 years at that point.
Do you have any plan for the apprentice program to live on now that
that's a good question. And I think so. Yeah, I think so, because Alexander and I are staying on. Yes, we're retiring, but we're staying on as consultants. So we'll still be at the barn on a regular basis, not a daily basis. We've got other things we want to do and other things we want to see, but we'll be there regularly. And so we can help people continue their progress. We've got Kayla Vogel, who has been with us for over 10 years now. She'll be doing the bulk of the training. We've got Courtney Holbrook, this is going to be her 4th year on the crew. She'll have a few that she's training on her own, and then a couple younger people that'll be coming along behind them. So yes, I think we will continue that. So Sandy's going to be there on pretty much a daily basis, and she's, obviously very capable and willing to help bring people along. So yeah, I think the apprentice program is still going to continue, and young people that are aspiring horse trainers will still work there. And we work a lot of young horses, and I think that's going to continue. And so they'll have the chance to prove themselves and chance to go to the ring. That's one thing I'm the proudest of is, a lot of barns, they'll have a quote unquote assistant trainer, but the head trainer shows everything. And that was never my goal to show all the horses. If you did the work and you needed a chance to get in the ring and prove you could do it, and if somebody proved they couldn't do it, well, that you proved that too. But that happens sometimes. But we had 6 different apprentices that won world championships at Mercer Springs Farm, and I think 5 more that got as high as 2nd. So that's 11 different people that got 1st or 2nd world champion titles. So that was we're proud of that, because we gave people the opportunity not only to just show the ones that were nobody else wanted to show, but we actually let them show some nice horses, and they did the job. They earned the right to show nice horses. It wasn't just they were handed a nice horse on a platter and said, "Here, you go show it today." They had to earn it.
This episode is made possible in part through the generous support of the Aschenbrenner family's Dreammakers LLC and their ongoing commitment to breeding and showing of American saddlebred horses. Their belief in equine versatility and public service, whether it be at the local grassroots, regional horse show, or the National Association level, strives to create an equine community with room for every horse and all riders. You can learn more by going to dreammakers-llc.com or search Dreammakers LLC on Facebook. You seem to have a really strong commitment to giving back, to doing some public service, and it's showing up whether you're, UPHA or ASHBA, but even in the apprentice program, that is great for your business. You've got some amazing help, but it pays dividends to the industry. We're all better because these people have had that experience with you. Can you just speak maybe in a little bit more detail, like maybe where that mindset comes from, and then why you have that kind of commitment to those things, and then what is it taking for you? Like, I feel like, and I've talked to like Donna Smith about this as well, your plate's already full. You're running a business. You don't need extra stuff to do, but you have chosen to do that. And so can you speak to your commitment to taking on these public projects?
The apprentice program, I don't really see it as a great sacrifice, because it's like you said, it gets us really motivated people working in the barn every day. And that's what we want. We don't want someone who's just there to pick up a paycheck and can't wait to get home as soon as the clock strikes 3:00. So that, I think, has been good for our business, and it's been enjoyable for me. That's something that I find very fulfilling. It's like, I enjoy training a really nice horse and getting to the ring and proving that it's a nice horse with a super performance, and that is very fulfilling for me. And it's the same thing when I see some of these young people that have worked here going out and winning big classes and training horses well and succeeding in the industry. Then that's also very fulfilling for me. It's fulfilling when they do it while they're working there. I mean, I love it when when I can put an assistant trainer in the ring and they go win a big class, and it feels really good. And it's always felt that way for me, and it's been that way for a long time, so that I really enjoy it. So it's not like it's some sacrifice. As far as doing some of the other stuff, it's partly, I think, because Alexandra and I decided very early on that we were not going to be parents. We didn't want to do that. And so whereas a lot of people, that's a big part of your life, is raising a child, and it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of commitment and financial and otherwise, and we didn't have that. So I feel like it gives us a little more freedom or opportunity, and to some extent obligation, to give back in a different sort of way. I mean, it's one thing if you're, if you have a child and that child turns into a, great citizen of the community or a great horseman or whatever the chosen field is, you've given back. But if you don't have any children, maybe there's other ways you can do it. And so these are the other ways that we do it.
Let's talk about retiring, because I first of all, speaking of gossip, there is plenty running around about.
Oh, yeah. I've heard a lot. I've heard some things that were close to the truth and some things that were a long way from the truth.
And when I heard it, I thought just the fact that you were talking about retiring was gossip. I'm like, oh, here they go again. And so can you set the rumor straight? And then after that, just talk about what it was like to make that decision. What kind of led you to it? And for those of us of a certain age, I think the scary part is I think you're a little younger than me, and
I sure look it.
I feel it. And they do not call me Old Man Griff for no reason. But it's a big decision. And how did you come to make it?
It's layers to that, how we came to make it. I think the first time I started thinking about it seriously, it would have been 2.5 or so years ago. I had a really good friend that I grew up with. His name was Mark Howard, and not in the horse business at all. I met him when we went to junior high, and he was the best athlete in our junior high school. And we got to be good friends through playing sports together, be on sports teams, ball and basketball both. And he was the best football player and the best basketball player in our school, and played football together all through high school. Great friends, did a lot of other things together, as we were growing up, and some things we can talk about and some things we really can't talk about that we did, but stayed out of the criminal record anyway. But Mark, long story short, Mark died of heart trouble when he was 53. So that would have been 2.5 years ago. and that you know you're going to die at some point. And I guess when you get in your 50s, at some point, you know that you've probably lived more of your life than you have left. But that really drove it home to me. Gosh, it may not be that much. Who knows? And I had a couple other friends of my age die from COVID, that sort of thing. Two guys. One guy was he was the chief of police at the town next door, and COVID got him. And just you wait a minute, this could be me just any time. And I've done a lot in the horse business, and I've had a great career in the horse business. But that's all I've done. I haven't done anything else. I've never been to the tour of the national parks. I'd like to see Yellowstone. I'd like to maybe have some other interests. But Alexandra and I both have been so all in on the horse business that's really all we've done. And we'd like to maybe see some other aspects of life before we're too old or sick or hurt to enjoy it. We're both blessed with good health. So if any of those rumors you've heard, that's not right. I've managed to knock on wood because I've still got a few more weeks left to work here, but I've not been seriously injured training a horse. And I'm proud of that for one thing, but at the same time, I feel a little lucky because a lot of people do get seriously injured training horses. And that's one layer of it right there. And the other layer is at 55 years old. And I know, Bob, you know this, and Gabby, you don't, as you get to this point, physically, you're not quite the same person, the same rider, the same anything you were when you were in your 20s, 30s, even 40s. I can feel that I'm not quite as sharp, and I don't have as much interest in being a trainer with a little less ability than I had when I was younger. So I just feel like it's a good time for us to pursue some other things. And then again, because we didn't have children, we haven't, had a lot of financial responsibility otherwise. And, we've had good horses and good clients, and didn't do anything else. So we never spent much money. Financially, we're at a place where we feel like we can retire and not be, poverty stricken anyway.
So what do you, besides heading out to Yellowstone, what are you hoping retirement looks like?
Yeah, I hope it looks like a lot of varied interests. I hope we stay involved in the horse world. I've got, I think I've got 9 clinics signed up to do this year coming up. So we're going to keep doing clinics. I've got some shows to judge. I'm going to do some of that. We just bought a 2-year-old filly. So we're going to own a horse, and Kayla's going to train her, and or Courtney one. I think actually Courtney may end up training this one. But so we've got want to have interest in the horse world. We want to be part of that. But at the same time, we want to, travel and see what we want to see, and maybe read some different books, and maybe I'll develop some new hobbies too.
Rumor on the street is that you are big, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, big birders. Is this true?
Birders?
Yeah, bird watching.
No, that's not true.
That's
See, the rumor mill can be.
Thank God.
Now, I will say,
stuff straight.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big birder. I do like birds. I think they're interesting. They're pretty. Alexandra has right outside our kitchen window, we have bird feeders, and so we do like to watch the birds come up. But I don't like make trips to look at birds. No,
okay.
We do feed the birds that are local to us, and we are starting to learn some of their
Okay.
like what species they are. But yeah, I don't see it birding being a big thing for me.
Okay. Before we get to the final 5, I first wanted to make sure that anybody that listens to this one goes back and listens to Trot Talk. They can find it I found it on Spotify. I just searched it. It was a great interview that you did with Tuffy Owens.
And Katie Serva.
Yep. And in getting ready to talk to you today, I called and talked to Tuffy a little bit. And before we got done, I asked him, I said, it's been several years since you guys did that interview. I said, if you could interview Smith today, what would you ask him? And I'm going to paraphrase this and maybe get it a little wrong, but I'm going to try. But he wanted you to talk about the programs and the efforts that you're kind of excited about right now at ASHBA in creating and focusing on helping new and existing breeders produce more young horses to meet the future needs of our industry.
Yeah, that's a great question. And boy, if I had all those answers, it just, I would have a magic wand is what I would have. But we do have some plans. And first, I want to say that there's this, narrative out there that, the saddlebreds are just plummeting off a cliff, that breeds in decline. Well, I just wrote an article to this effect, but in 2014, 12 years ago, we registered 1,241 horses for the year. This year, we're on pace to register about 1,240 horses, depending on how the month of December plays out. We've had some years below that since 2014, and some years above it, but more or less for the last 12 years, 2014 to 2025, we've had flat. We're basically flat on our registrations. So the breed is not, dying or falling off, but it's not growing, certainly. So how do we make it grow? And I'm with Tuffy. We got to find a way to get some growth out there. So we did two of the things I did. I restarted an old committee that had been disbanded called the Breeders Committee. And Julie Jones chaired that this year, and they got really active, and they've gotten a lot of initiatives. The breeder spotlights they've been putting out are some of that, and they're at the upcoming convention, which, by the way, this is my chance to plug. Everybody should come to the ASHBA convention, sign up. We're going to have a great event. It's our 135th anniversary, honoring our past and inspiring our future. That's the theme. And we've got some great events and three different seminars presented by the Breeders Committee. Proud of that committee's, reconstitution and the good work that's happened this year, and hopefully that'll carry forward. Also, I started a new committee, and Jimmy Robertson's chaired it this year, called the Outreach Committee. And that outreach committee is specifically to reach out to traditional religious communities such as the Amish and the Mennonites, who have, lots of horse interest, lots of saddlebred history, and have not been registering a lot of horses. But I've been to the Saddlebred Expo in Pennsylvania. It was just canceled this year due to a EHV outbreak in the area, not amongst saddlebreds, but amongst other horses in the area. And so they canceled the event, which was disappointing. But they were going to have a great event. There are other events up in Ohio that actually is going on one today. There's Jack Chambers is up there doing some demos towards an Amish geared event up in Indiana. So how do we they've done such a good job, the Amish especially communities, in breeding Morgans and bringing the Morgan numbers up, and they're an important aspect to it. How do we do that with the saddlebreds? I think that's a real area of potential growth for our breed, and I really wanted to target that. And Jimmy agreed to be the chair, and he's got a great committee full of people that are coming up with ideas. And again, he's gotten some demos up organized for this week, and hopefully more of that in the future. So those are the thrusts that I've made to try to get the numbers up. And I certainly agree that we need more babies hitting the ground.
Do you know, or I haven't seen like the data, but like we've lost some of those really big breeding programs like Mrs. Weldon and that. And it feels like we're starting to count on more of the smaller breeders. Does that look different to you as the president of ASHBA? Does trying to help that small breeder versus when you maybe could rely a little bit more on some of those programs that were making 100 plus horses a year?
Sure. I think it absolutely looks different, because you've got to provide more education, because we're trying to get new people to breed, and the technology is so much different now too that people can actually breed their show mares. So the more education we can put out there, and promotion of opportunities to use the technology that we have, and to help it, help with the affordability, because it can also cost you an arm and a leg if you're not careful to raise a colt. If you use ICSI and embryo recips and all that, it does add to the cost. But if you've got a really nice mare, it can certainly be worth it.
And now the final 5, our 5 favorite questions for our favorite stable-minded people. If you were not into show horses, what would you be doing? I think this could be also rephrased as, so what are you going to do now that you're not doing show horses?
Well, I think the best job in America right now is a fired college football coach. So, and truly, I've always been interested in sports and athletics, and try to, bring that into the horse training, because that's all you are as a professional rider. You're a professional athlete. And so I probably would have done something in the sports fields. Not necessarily, I wasn't enough of an athlete to be a professional football player, but maybe I'd have been a coach. Maybe I'd have gotten into another sport. I don't know. But something competitive like that, I think, is what I would have done. And still interested in it. But, again, it's going to have to be more managerial at this point than competitive.
All right. To some degree, we all have a horse addiction. What do you think is at the root of yours?
Yeah, it's when you see that horse outside, get excited and turned on, the horse flags and snorts and its eye pops out and it floats across the field. That is the root of my addiction. And I've, wondered how these breeds that have no motion and have work with their heads down between their legs, how they have the popularity that they do. Because if you look back through history, people loved high-headed, fancy horses that felt great about themselves all the way through history. That's what the cave paintings were about. That's what the statues from the Middle Ages and the Renaissance were about, was horses that were high-headed and felt great. And that's what inspires me about a horse, is when they get their head up and they feel great about themselves, and they are natural born show horses. And so that is the root of my horse addiction, is the electricity, the charisma that a natural born show horse has and exudes.
Big picture, what is the greatest gift that your involvement in horses has given you?
Relationships. I mean, let's start with Alexandra, because I would never have met her had it not been for the horses, and really all of the wonderful people I know that is, make your life rich. It's the relationships with the people, and and the relationships with the horses, because to me that's as fulfilling anyway as a relationship with a person. Once you get a horse to really trust you, it's a great feeling, and it certainly is fulfilling.
All right. What is the biggest risk you've taken, and how did it pay off?
Yeah, the biggest risk was when I was 29, and I had saved some money, because I knew, and I had not saved a lot of money, but I had saved some money. I knew I needed an arena at home. We didn't have an arena at our barn. We had a hallway. And trying to teach kids to ride and show in a hallway is hard, and the weather's not always great here. So we had an outdoor ring, but it wasn't all that nice either. So we needed an arena, and I'd saved a little bit of money. And I went to 3T Farm, Randy Tabor's place in Scottsville, Kentucky, shopping for a couple of clients. We were going to buy a couple yearlings. We hoped to buy a couple yearlings, and I'd met Randy through working at Nelson's. And anyway, he showed me this filly that she bowled me over. I loved her. Hillary Whitaker rode her, who Hillary was working for us the last several years, but back in the day then she was working for Randy. And she rode this filly, and she just blew me away, and I just had to have her, and I couldn't find any clients to buy her, and I couldn't find any clients to go partners with me, because then, when I'm 29, I don't have a bunch of high roller clients. So I just sucked it up, and I paid $50,000 of my own money, and I bought her, and that was Have You Ever, and she put me on the map. And I sold her, and I'd already built the arena, but borrowed all the money at that time, because I thought I'd borrow part of the money. Well, I ended up borrowing all the money for the arena, and I sold her and I paid it off. So yeah, the risk worked out in a lot of ways.
And what is something that you are currently excited about?
Being able to do anything I want to do, Bob. I'm excited about that.
Well, Smith, I thank you so much for doing this. It's been fantastic. And I sure appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bob. Thank you, Gabby.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you too. I hope we see more of each other.
Yes, we will.
A huge thanks to Smith for sitting down, setting the record straight, and giving us some insight into why he gives so much back to our industry. And we wish him all the best in this new chapter he's stepping into. Now put down your phone, pick up the reins, and we'll see you back here next time.